Hi, this is my review of the Introduction to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons box set. This box set was what got me started into playing RPGs. I didn't know anything about role-playing games until that I used this box set to run my first adventures, and I have many fond memories of it. Well, let's talk about how I got started into role-playing games first, so you understand the context of what I really like this box set, and how I can still criticize some of its negative things. Well, trying to get started into playing RPGs here in Mexico is somewhat difficult. Not so much today because we have the internet and there's a lot of information available to us. But back in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't any internet as it exists today, so it was pretty hard to find information or players who knew how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And there was also this this dogmatic stigma or taboo of playing fantasy games or things that had to do with magic and monsters. You were labeled as probably some sort of devil worshipper or some kind of gang member. You want to play these things. And well, I got started playing Atari games first, and then I moved on to board games. I still play video games, but back then I was a bit more into board games first. And then I started playing this board game called Calabozo, which is basically the Mexican version of Dungeon. And I really like the concept of going into this underground complex, killing monsters and taking treasure and all that. So I wanted something more, and I started to search for something better. And I eventually bumped into Advanced Hero Quest, and I got that game, but it still felt pretty board gamey, and I was looking for something, something more. And then I knew about Dungeons and Dragons through the cartoon. I started watching cartoon, and I really liked it because it had all those sword and sorcery elements. It was still somewhat tame or mild compared with to other stories, but the basic elements were still there. And I didn't know much about Dungeons and Dragons. I thought that maybe the role-playing game had to do with playing as the kids in the show that got transported into this magical realm through a theme park attraction. And eventually I met this guy who said that he played Dungeons and Dragons with a few friends of his. And to be fair, the stigma that you may belong to some sort of gang if you play Dungeons and Dragons wasn't entirely unjustified because of the taboo that, oh, you're evil, you play Dungeons and Dragons, you're a bad person. And there were a lot of bad people who took advantage of the stereotype and just adjusted themselves to that niche. So when I first went to this gathering of friends, it was a pretty ugly place. It was like a bar, not exactly a bar, but it was a joint where it was supposed to be a hobby store, but once you got inside, it was pretty much a bar. And the first adventure I played as a player character was just horrible. It was awful. The dungeon master had like a photocopy of the player's handbook, and that was it, and he didn't understand almost anything. We were playing it all wrong. We used these plastic Thundercat miniatures that came out from potato chip bags, and the big monster was literally a Tecate beer can. So it was an awful adventure. And the people there, yeah, they were pretty much gang members. So my first experience with Dungeons and Dragons or with a role-playing game was pretty negative, but I still kept searching for that better experience. I think role-playing games in Mexico would be more popular if people would just read more and try to develop a bit more imagination. And well, eventually I went to the United States to visit my uncle, and it was in Rulebooks that I saw the box set, the Introduction to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons box set. and I got it immediately. I got my hands on it and started running adventures, and wow, it just blew my mind. It was amazing. Now let's talk about the quality of the box set. I don't have the box anymore. It pretty much disintegrated because I used it to carry around all my stuff, and it fell apart in about 3 years. But I still have most of the components. First of all, let's talk about the CD that comes with the game. This is the cover of the box set, and this is the CD inside. And this CD is used when you play the adventures presented in the Dungeon Master's Guide. You have these little text boxes that say, oh, play track 3 or 5 or 11, and the CD starts producing all these sound effects, maybe battle sound effects, and it also narrates a part of the story. It also presents the NPC's voices. If your characters were interacting with this NPC or this monster or enemy, the voice would be right here, and the characters would listen and then react based upon what they heard from the CD. That was pretty cool. There were some times that didn't make too much sense. For example, in the first adventure and the second one, there is like a group of adventurers that are supposed to be speaking for the player characters, and some players got confused. They were like, but is that my voice? Or is that somebody else that's traveling with us? So there was a bit of confusion there. In my opinion, I don't think they should have added voices for the player characters, because the player characters themselves are supposed to speak for their characters. So that was a bit, I think that's a bit negative. But overall, the CD does a pretty good job in setting up the mood, even though there are some cheesy parts, some voices that are just way over the top. And and they also give you a very small audio introduction to what Dungeons and Dragons is all about. The box set also came with a set of 6 miniatures, but I used them quite a lot. I didn't have too many miniatures back then, and they fell to pieces. I think the only one surviving is the cleric one. They were all pretty generic. The plastic was pretty cheap, because compared to Citadel miniatures that I had back then, these broke apart too many times. I had to glue them back, and they were pretty generic. You've probably seen some of them in recent Dungeons and Dragons miniatures games. They always use the same models. I think only the archer was generic. I think the other 5 were more unique. But well, you also got these plastic dice that are pretty sturdy. I use them all the time, even now, and they are the same kind of dice that comes with all of the box sets from TSR back then. You also had these character cards, pre-generated character cards. They had all the information to play your character in the front and in the back up to level 5. However, the artwork is recycled. As you can see, I think this is from Dragonlance, and they call this guy Morgan the Mysterious here, but that's not his name. You have the cleric, you have a thief, the elf, the fighter. I think this image is from Greyhawk. And this one, Delvar Iron Fist. I think that's Bruin or Battlehammer, and in the background that's Dritz, Dourdan, and Wolfgar and Regis. And I don't really like that when they recycle artwork like that, and they give the characters other names. You also get a card for the town, and all the information about the shops and all that. And you also get a character sheet template of sorts. This is only useful for the introductory box set, sorry, because there was there wasn't too much space to I know to enter your proficiencies and all that came up with the core book. The cards are decent, but they got stained really easily with, I don't know, dust or whatever, and I think they're about to fall apart as well. You also had the Dungeon Master screen. Pretty simple, it just has very basic information. Still, I used it quite a lot because it was my only Dungeon Master screen back then. And now let's talk about the books. First you get the Player's Handbook. You have a list of equipment back here. And the quality of these books isn't that good. It isn't bad considering I use them quite a lot, but it could have been better in my opinion. You have some pretty decent illustrations, some even good illustrations, I should say. I really like this one a lot. That's pretty cool too. So this book had all the basic information to play characters up to level 5. So it was pretty bare bones, pretty lukewarm, just information on how to make attack rolls, trying to hit armor class 0 or Thaco. And you got some spells and thief abilities. Just the few basic things to get started. You also had a monstrous manual. You get information for different treasure and points here. And you get a few somewhat weak monsters up to level 9 hit dice, I think. I don't know, you had a brass dragon that's level 20 hit dice, I think. Dragon. Ancient Copper Dragon, 20 hit dice. Ah, yeah. Here it is. But most of the monsters are just somewhat weak, so the characters can actually face them during these introductory adventures. And you get a lot of magic items at the end as well. Well, not that many, but just enough for these adventures. With some pretty cool illustrations too. And here's the Dungeon Master guide, and I actually like this guide more than the core version of it, even though it sounds completely, I don't know, like contradiction. This part here, it was a grid, so you could design your first map. Now I'm going to be reviewing some of the adventures, so there will be spoilers. If you plan to play these adventures, just a heads up. And well, the reason why I like this Dungeon Master guide more than the core version of it was because here they actually gave you information on how to be a Dungeon Master, and the Big Black Book was almost kind of like a collection of optional rules and magic items, but it had almost no useful advice on how to run a game. But here they taught you how to set up everything, use the adventures, and how to act, how to roleplay, how to be a good Dungeon Master. Just pretty cool stuff. I was pretty disappointed when I got the core version, the Big Black Book, and it had nothing of that. And well, this contains 3 adventures. The first adventure, the Tomb of Damara. Oh, here look, you were supposed to play the CD when this guy was giving the announcement that heroes were needed to go into an expedition and all that. The Tomb of Damara is basically a sort of like a treasure hunt. This is the map. I would show you the foldable paper map that came with the game, but it started getting a lot of creases and all that, and I cut it apart into separate rooms so I could use it with other adventures. So it's all scattered in different folders and notebooks. So this is the map of the adventure, and you have to be entering different rooms and fighting monsters and searching for secret doors and all that. And eventually you had to fight Bone Gnasher, the ogre that was looking for the orb of dragonkind, like you. The second part of this book is just details about the town of Freedale, which is a town that you can place. You can place it fairly close to Shadowdale in the Forgotten Realms. The second adventure was really cool. This is the Ghost of Harrow Hill. Now I really like horror themed adventures, and this was basically a haunted house adventure. You can see all the rooms here, and the plot was there was this necromancer that was getting really old, but he was in love with a young woman. Here's the necromancer, and he became obsessed with her and how he wasn't young enough for her. So he decided to trap her in the mansion. Here she is. In a pretty creepy way, and he tried to make himself young again, but he turned into a juju zombie, and your characters got trapped inside the house as well, quite a few years after that, so Erica had already died. And I think this was better than Tomb of Damara because it had more plotline, felt more, I don't know, more complex, and the characters had a sort of like a time limit. They had to escape from the mansion before. I don't remember how much time they had, but it was like a race against time, or it almost felt like that. And then you had the adventure under Mount Dread. You didn't get a foldable map for this one. You had to make your paper map. Although I think the British version of this box set did have a map. And this is basically, well, it reminds me a lot of Undermountain. It's kind of like a labyrinth inside a mountain and going deeper and deeper. And the characters have to face more stronger monsters than what they faced in the Tomb of Damara or the Ghost of Harrow Hill. And they didn't give you the third level or beyond. They only gave you the first level, and then they give you some details about the second level. And the third level, you were on your own. You have to design your own map and start placing monsters and treasure. And well, let me tell you what I think about this box set. I think this is a pretty good box set, considering I knew nothing about how to play a role-playing game. It showed me the basics. However, there are some things that could have been better as well. For example, they don't really teach you much about how to build a balanced encounter. And I know this is a pretty old school game. AD&D, or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, is still old school. You're supposed to kill characters, and your characters feel more like adventurers and not like superheroes. But for somebody who didn't know how to play Dungeons and Dragons, and you started reading this book, and it said, oh, you can play it with 2 or 6 players, but that was almost impossible if you played the adventures as they were presented against a single player character. He was going to get killed really easily, and I didn't know about that. That's why I had a lot of deaths first. Until I got 3 or 4 players, things went a bit more smooth, but at first there were a lot of people that player characters that died. But considering that it served as, I don't know, my first step to something better, I think it was a pretty decent box set. And there are a lot better introductory box sets in these days, but this box set I think serves as an example for future products. So, and I always have fun memories about it. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know, and see you later.